All right, here we go. We're live in Indianapolis for the 2025 NFL Scouting Combine. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. Chase Sr. here with you. And as always, no matter where you are or how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's show a part of your day. And coming up over the next several minutes, want to comb through the latest Eagles news and rumors going into free agency as well as in the NFL Draft. Before we dive in, be sure to lock us in, hit that subscribe button because this is your home for the best, most elite Eagles coverage right here on YouTube. We're about 320 people away from 114,000 subscribers right here on the channel. So what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button right now because I have you covered with some great Eagles content. And coming up here, going to play some clips from General Manager Howie Roseman's press conference this week in Indianapolis, and we're going to cover a lot of ground. Howie's going to talk about re-signing Zack Baun and the possibilities of bringing back the first-team All-Pro finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. He was, of course, asked about the trade rumors around the Eagles and trading for one of the top defensive players in the game in Myles Garrett. Building the trenches. He called his obsession there a healthy obsession, and other teams across the NFL here at the Combine starting to take notice of Howie Roseman's team-building strategy after watching how the Eagles throttled the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Howie explains why he loves Eagles fans. He has an update after getting domed in the head with that beer during the parade. Moro Ajomo, Jalix Hunt stepping up if Joshua and Milton Williams leave in free agency, and I asked him, compare the Super Bowl defense following the 2017 season and following the 2024 season going into the following year and how those teams might differ and what he's excited about with the current construction of this Eagles roster. Let's begin with Zack Baun. I've said it here on the show countless times. I think that is priority number one for free agency for Philadelphia this year because of how good Zack Baun played, the fit in Vic Fangio's defense, the desire for him to continue to flourish under the system, the diamond in the rough player that he was as Philadelphia signed him on a one-year, $3 million deal. He's one of the best value deals in free agency for Philadelphia. He was the glue of that Eagles defense, one of the leaders of that Eagles defense. Him and Jalen Carter, I thought, were the two most important players on the defensive side of the ball. And according to Jeff McLean of the Philadelphia Inquirer, he reported that according to NFL sources, priority number one for the Eagles in free agency is bringing back Zack Baun. I just don't see how this Eagles defense can move forward without him. Plays with feel, plays with instincts, able to read and diagnose plays against the run, against the pass. Love his versatility as well. You can use him as a pass rusher and just so good with how he's able to plug run gaps and then cause destruction and make game-changing plays in the pass game. And we saw it all throughout the regular season, all throughout the playoffs. As we know, though, Howie hasn't always invested into the linebacker position, but that might change going into this free agency cycle. And here's what Howie had to say about that.
Everything really is player dependent. You know, when we talk about situations, it depends on the quality of play of the player, the person that we're talking about. And so you don't want to make any exceptions. Obviously, you have to have a vision of how you want your team to look. In the salary cap era, you have a certain number of resources that you can allocate, whether it's money or draft picks. And so whenever you do something, you're taking it from somewhere else. I mean, there's no way at the stage we are with our team that we can do something major without it coming from somewhere else. So we have to make all those decisions, but I think to kind of put us in a box and say, hey, we're not going to play, and I'm not saying that you're saying that we're not going to pay because historically we haven't done that. I mean, part of what we do is evolve and look at things and see how things are affecting our team, how things are affecting the league, and seeing our place in that.
And after the Eagles won the Super Bowl, the following week, I was trying to compare the future of this Eagles organization after winning another Lombardi trophy. Howie Roseman is now a two-time Super Bowl champion winning general manager, and he's going to go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame at some point. But I had compared and contrasted the two teams that have brought two Super Bowl titles back to the city of Philadelphia. They won in 2017, they won in 2024. But I had said here on the show, I think this Eagles team is better equipped to go on a long-term run, to go on a dynastic type of run, to maybe repeat as Super Bowl champions in 2025 because the core of this team is a lot younger. So I specifically wanted to ask Howie Roseman about that. What's different about this current existing core now compared to 2017, and here's what he had to say.
Well, I could talk about this team, not going back to 2017. We have a lot of guys who I think are in the prime of their careers under long-term contracts. Not saying that team didn't, who are kind of in this 26, 27, 28-year-old range. And so really we have to do whatever we can to make sure that we keep this window open for as long as possible. The most important season is this one coming up, 2025, and doing whatever we can to maximize that. But we have to get creative to make sure that we're keeping as many of our good players as we can. I sat up here last year and I said that's going to include playing young players. And I think that's going to be a huge part of what we are going forward because we're fortunate enough to have a lot of good players who are making a lot of money.
And what did he mention there specifically? A lot of core players in their respective primes under contract. And so I think as we project forward for the Philadelphia Eagles, they are really well put together and well positioned to be one of the most dominant teams in the NFL for the foreseeable future. And could they add another dominant player to this roster in Myles Garrett? What's cool about being here at the Combine, and this is my second year being here, a little bit of a job fair for the NFL. Everywhere you go, you see NFL insiders, you see NFL coaches and general managers, you see scouting departments, you see members of organizations who work behind the scenes. Sometimes you'll go to a Starbucks and you might see a confrontation between two media members. That's a lot of the chatter here from Indianapolis for the NFL Scouting Combine between Jordan Schultz and Ian Rappaport. But back to being serious here, you hear a lot of buzz. You hear a lot of chatter and a lot of the talk from a lot of people who cover the NFL, a lot of teams, is that the Eagles are looked at as a dark horse to trade for Myles Garrett. Could the rich get richer? We know that Howie is very aggressive. We know that he goes star hunting. We know that a trade can never be ruled out. We know that he really values the trenches, and we'll talk more about that before the end of the show. But we know that he scouted Myles Garrett, and he looks at him as a franchise-changing player. And Andrew Berry, the Browns general manager, used to work under Howie. And so that direct line of communication is there. And Howie, throughout his general manager tenure with Philadelphia, has made big splash after big splash. He's made some trades in which he's been able to fleece teams. And so that's why a lot of teams across the NFL think that Philadelphia, especially with them losing Milton Williams and Josh Sweat, could be a player for Myles Garrett. Howie was asked about that. And as always, he said, I'm not going to talk about players under contract with other teams, but I want you to focus on what he did say toward the end. And that's this, is that he will look into every player if it means they could be a cornerstone piece for this Eagles roster.
How many years have you been doing this? Yeah, I figured. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about anyone under contract with another team. I think that, one thing that I can promise our fans is that there will not be a player that's available that we won't study, that we won't look at and see if it can help the team. Sometimes those opportunities work, and you're able to do that, and sometimes they don't.
And there's no doubt a Myles Garrett trade would cost a lot as far as trade compensation, draft compensation, and he would want a new contract extension. But Howie Roseman is a magician with being able to work out trades and being able to manipulate the salary cap and pulling off some of those financial gymnastics. I mentioned the Eagles' defensive line, them losing potentially Josh Sweat and Milton Williams. Whether they trade for Myles Garrett or not, there are two players who are going to need to step up, who will see more snaps and will see their roles increase with Sweat and Williams leaving. And I think that both Sweat and Williams could get between $18 and $20 million average annual value per year. That's Jalix Hunt and Moro Ajomo. They really came on this year in general. Jalix Hunt more toward the end of the year and in the playoffs, to the point where Bryce Huff was a non-factor for this Eagles defense. He wasn't even active for Super Bowl 59, and Jalix Hunt was. And in the playoffs, in the Super Bowl, he was terrific. That twitch coming off the edge, a lot of quickness. I expect him to have a breakout sophomore campaign, just like Nolan Smith was able to have a huge second year. And Moro Ajomo has a lot of talent from the Eagles' interior defensive line. I think that he could be a really good player, and maybe not to the lengths of replacing Milton Williams, because I think Williams is a better player, but being able to fulfill that role. And Howie, he looks at those two guys as the arrow pointing up for both young guys.
Yeah, very, very impressed by what they showed in their play time. Obviously didn't play a tremendous amount. They're young players who have really the tools in their body to be really good players, and expect to jump from both those guys.
And a couple of times here, just on this show alone, I've alluded to the fact that Howie loves building the trenches. That's the defensive line. That's the offensive line. That kind of fits my team building strategy, right? When you're putting together a football team, you, of course, have to find a quarterback. You want to protect the quarterback, and then you want to get players who can get after the quarterback. And so the Eagles have been able to check all of those boxes. And this is an Andy Reid team-building philosophy. Howie started as an intern under Andy Reid, fresh out of college from Florida in 2000. And Andy Reid put an emphasis on finding offensive linemen and defensive linemen and building depth there because injuries happen in the trenches. There's contact on every single play. And so that's why Howie always seems to have 7, 8 quality offensive linemen and defensive linemen on a roster, and I loved how he put this. He called it a healthy obsession.
Never feel like we have enough O linemen or D linemen. Always on the lookout for those positions at every level, whether it's in free agency, whether it's in the draft, whether it's after the draft, whether it's on the street. It's really like an unhealthy obsession, Zach, to be honest with you. And so I never feel good enough because I can convince myself, I can go back and watch a game from this year and see that we were down 3 offensive linemen, and then I'm going, well, now we need 8 starters, and so it's the same with the D-line. I think that those are incredibly important positions, and, you can never have enough of them.
That's that football guy type of quote, and for football nerds out there, you gotta love it. And in just listening to other GMs and coaches and scouts talk here at the Combine, other teams are trying to adopt that team-building philosophy because the Eagles' formula to beat Patrick Mahomes, rushing with 4, getting pressure, having him under siege, was the same formula in the other Super Bowl that Patrick Mahomes lost in 2020 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they generated the most quarterback pressures in the history of a Super Bowl. If you can get home with 4 and then you have 7 guys drop back, you're going to be able to win more times than not. And that's how the Eagles were able to thrash Kansas City back a few weeks ago in New Orleans. Before we dip on out of here, got to give you a laugh, right? Howie Roseman during the Eagles Super Bowl parade got domed in the head by that beer which came flying on the float that he was riding on. He had a cut on his forehead, and he had said, doing a little bit better, was able to take care of that injury. The scar no longer noticeable, by the way. So Howie doing some good things to recover from that. He talked about that and also why he loved Eagles fans just from the fact that during that Eagles parade, 1.5 million people showed up. Every player, every coach, including Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie, they took notice of that.
I did survive the parade right here. And afterwards, I felt like we have an unbelievable fan base that we get millions of people to sit and cheer in 25-degree weather and root for our football team. The head's better. It's better. I'm a little less handsome than I was a couple of weeks ago, but I'm not sure I had a lot to go there anyway. So,
look, there isn't another Eagles YouTube channel here in Indianapolis for the NFL Combine that's giving you this access, that's giving you this type of content. That's why you got to hit that subscribe button. It's Philadelphia Eagles Now. I'm Chase Sr. If you're still kicking it, give me a real one down below so that I know you watched until the end, and I'll catch you later.